All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's 10th Insider Threat Podcast, or if Apple had named it Insider Threat Podcast X. I'm joined today by the NetApp Senior Technical Marketing Engineer, Justin Parisi. Hello, Justin.
Hi.
I am your host and the STEALTHbits CTO, Jonathan Sander. How you doing today, Justin? You doing well?
Doing great. Thanks for asking. How about yourself?
I'm okay. I'm
Good.
okay. So I think we gave you the read-in. I'm going to ask you some questions. I'm going to ask you some questions about your answers, and we'll see how it works out. As the name of the podcast implies, we're all about insider threats here, and I know over at NetApp, you guys are just as concerned about the ransomware problem as we are. So I'd love to begin there. I'd love to hear sort of the NetApp perspective on ransomware and maybe some of the things that you put out there that you feel can help address some of the ransomware issues.
Well, the good news is that we've been prepared for ransomware since the start of ONTAP. So we've actually had technology within ONTAP since we began that can actually help you with ransomware attacks. So if you're not familiar with what a ransomware attack is, it's essentially someone taking ransom over your data and making you pay to get access to it. The way to get around that is traditionally, either paying the ransom or, restoring from a backup. Depending on how aggressive your backup schedules are, or if you've even been checking your backups and making sure they've been successful, you may or may not be able to do that. With a snapshot, with ONTAP snapshots, you're able to take snapshots instantaneously and pretty much restore instantaneously because all they are pointers to data blocks within your storage system. As you delete data, we will keep that data inside the snapshot. And the reason why a snapshot is going to be immune to things like ransomware attacks is because it's read-only. So a ransomware attack can change a snapshot because it's just not allowed to. So that's one way to approach it. If somebody were to get in and attack your system, by getting access as an admin, they could delete your snapshots, of course, but ransomware traditionally doesn't operate that way.
Okay. And what's interesting is there's actually ransomware these days. You're not guaranteed like you used to be that when you pay, things go well, right? There's a lot of people faking ransomware these days. Things that look like ransomware, act like ransomware, except when you pay, nothing happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's obviously really unfortunate. And it's interesting to me too. The snapshot technology is a major improvement over just relying on backups for a lot of reasons. But I want to ask you: are you aware of any attack that's ever been sophisticated enough to actually capture the rights that would be necessary to delete the snapshots? And
so, any brute force attack where you can get the username and password, traditionally you can get into a system, right?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I don't mean that. What I mean is, like, are you aware of someone who's actually figured out how to automate that in some way to specifically find and delete snapshots? Because I'm not. I'd be really impressed, frankly, if somebody.
Yeah. I have not heard of that. Even if that did happen, there are ways to protect yourself against that because we have methods to replicate data into disaster recovery sites as well as replicate data into the cloud, right? So if you wanted to protect your data twofold, threefold, fourfold even, you could do that by replicating off-site so that even if someone got into your source system and started just wiping things out, you'd be protected because you have other sites that have the data intact.
Gotcha. So NetApp, the platform for the paranoid. Good. That's
yeah,
good.
Absolutely.
You can shove it all over the place and make sure that you've got a copy no matter what.
Yep.
So there's another thing. So snapshots are one thing, right? Trying to be a dutiful host, I did just a minimal amount of research. And I know one of the newer things that you guys are putting out there is called Snap Lock. And reading about it, I saw security applications for it, surely, but it also just sounded kind of cool. Tell me about it. Tell me a little more about it. Tell us a little.
So we've actually had SnapLock for a while. So what SnapLock is intended to do is to honor compliance regulations, right? So things like HIPAA standards, where you have to keep medical records around for 7 years as per the government, right? So with SnapLock, you have two options. You have compliance, which is basically setting a timer, a clock, and nothing can be deleted until that clock expires. And then you have enterprise level snap lock, where a storage administrator can actually set the policies and be able to delete things themselves or change the policies based on what they need to change it for. So you have some flexibility with snap lock. That's all integrated within the same license and clustered ONTAP. What we've introduced in ONTAP 9.3, which is actually due out this week, is the ability to do things like legal holds. So if a court orders you to retain a certain set of documents, you can use SnapLock to do that. If you have a disgruntled employee that's been let go and they have access to delete things, you can set event-based retentions policies on your data so that that employee, as he's let go, he doesn't have access to this anymore based on the event delete things. In addition to that, we also have something that's not really security related, but it's a video append mode where you can actually append to an existing video file, kind of like the tape cassettes where you could break off the tabs. We talked about this earlier. I'm dating myself, but yeah. So I mean, essentially like that.
Hopefully the audience can either Google that or understand it one way or the other. You and I are old enough where we both get the tab.
CDR, is that modern enough? CDR technology?
Possibly, yeah. That might work. That might work.
Yeah.
But that's I find the SnapLock stuff interesting. I find it specifically interesting in the new the new features you're putting out there, because that definitely relates to a lot of the stuff that people are dealing with that are watching this, right? They definitely are trying to meet the regulatory burdens and try to lock things down. Now, obviously you're aware that STEALTHbits is a NetApp partner, and we integrate with FPolicy and we grab all this data, and there's probably 500,000 things we could talk about how all these things interact. But I know FPolicy is near and dear to your heart specifically. What's new there in the new version you guys are rolling out, or what can a greedy vendor like me hope to be taking advantage of through FPolicy?
Well, FPolicy's been there for a while, integration with that. And again, going back to our ransomware discussion, we're actually, that's another way to help protect with ransomware attacks, because you can block based on file, right? Based on file type. So if you know of a specific file type that might be carrying a ransomware, you can basically block that file type and prevent people from ever getting it. And this is how you avoid the internal intrusions where you have users that are happy clickers and they just, I got a file from Bob, I'm gonna go click on that, and then all of a sudden the entire data set is gone, right? So
right. Well, I mean, we also go about that with from the access governance point of view, right? So we actually try to look and be preventative and make sure that Bob doesn't have more access than he needs in the first place, right? So we tend to try to shut it down in the forward-facing way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So okay, now again, I did a little bit of homework, but let's pretend I didn't, and tell me, you've got this new release coming out, and if I'm a security pro and I'm watching this, because most likely the people who are watching this, what else am I going to be really interested in this new release? What's going to be thrown me?
So we alluded a little bit earlier to people getting into a system through brute force attacks and getting access to your username and password. I mean, so that's always a concern, whether it's an ONTAP storage system or your Linksys router, right? So essentially, what we added in ONTAP 9.3 is the ability to add a third mechanism into the login portion of this with the multi-factor authentication, and we implemented the integration with identity providers. So support Microsoft Active Directory Federation services or federated services, and Shibboleth. So you'll be able to tie into those identity providers and provide a key in addition to your username and password to give you more security over your logins. For SSH commands or CLI, you'll be using your standard SSH key pair in addition to your username and password, so that'll add an extra layer of security to prevent people from getting into a system. We also have the ability to do role-based access. So if you have people that are, junior level storage administrators and they want to log into a system to check things, you can set up roles that are read-only essentially, so they can only go in and take a look at things as opposed to deleting things, right? So that's been there. That's been there for a while. Yeah, that's been there for a while. Right. Yeah, so just to highlight what we already have. And then NetApp volume encryption, we added an enhancement in ONTAP 9.3 where you can use an off-box key manager to provide for a higher level of compliance for security. So right now we're qualifying FIPS 140-2 compliance with our NetApp volume encryption. We don't do level 3 yet. And level 2 is still being evaluated by the government. So, that could take a while. So on, having to need greater compliance, you can use your off-box key manager as opposed to the onboard key manager we have, and use what you already have in your existing infrastructure. And if you're not familiar with NetApp volume encryption, it's essentially what it sounds like: the encryption of your data at rest at a volume level, as opposed to having to encrypt the entire storage system.
Right. Crazy. Okay. Is that it? That's our list, or do you want to throw anything else in?
Let's see what else. From a security perspective, I mean, that's essentially the main highlights there.
Gotcha.
As with any security, anything security related, you're always evolving and addressing threats as they come in. So I would expect more security enhancements in the future as ONTAP evolves. But for now, that's what we have. So.
Gotcha. So let me ask you about the multi-factor, right? So you've got these federation providers, right? So you can bring in an identity from another identity provider, and then is the multi-factor challenge coming from your system, or are you depending on the federation provider to do the multi-factor challenge?
We're depending on the federation provider. So if there's a problem with communicating with it, you would have an issue logging in, which. Yeah. I mean, honestly, that's a security gateway itself, right?
Well, that's the whole point. Yeah. That's when you have an identity provider. If the identity provider fails to provide the identity, then
and that avoids man-in-the-middle attacks.
The storage system not giving you a file. That's sort of its raison d'etre, right? So if it's not doing that, then it's not doing what it's supposed to. So yeah, I was just curious because I've seen architectures where you kind of have these things serially, right? Where you have, the identity provider, and then once the identity provider says, "Okay, you are who you are," now I, the system that know who you are, am going to challenge you based on this multi-factor system that I have, right? So it's kind of different. I actually think you've done it the smarter way because, not only is that less work for you, but that also does mean that if I have ADFS set up and I'm switching providers on the multi-factor side, and I want to configure that universally for all things that use ADFS, I make that switch there, and your system will simply benefit from that. So that's the right way to do it. So that's
absolutely. Yeah, we want to be agnostic as possible, so that we're not dealing with having to make configuration changes just because we want to make a change to our infrastructure.
Yep. No, it makes perfect sense to me. Okay. Well, that's really cool stuff. I guess, what we'll do is we'll wrap it up here. Justin, thank you very much for joining us today.
Yep, no problem. And if you want to learn more about ONTAP, we have a podcast, techontappodcast.com.
There you go.
And I have a blog, why is the internet broken.wordpress.com.
That is not the name of your blog.
Yes.
I swear to God, that was not drama. If you're watching this, I did not know that until this second, and that's really cool. That was the honest reaction you got. But that's really cool. I like that. Why is the internet broken?
I just wanted it to pop up anytime anyone typed that in. Why is the internet broken?
Yeah, no, I imagine a lot of people wander to your blog as a result.
Just by accident. They're like, "What is this?"
Yeah, exactly.
Stuff. But anyway, yeah.
All right. Well, very good. So Justin just gave you a couple things that you can do to learn more. We will include more in the doobly-doos below the videos and podcasts. Wherever you found this, you will find links. And we will put not only what has just been mentioned, but also some more fun links to the ONTAP 9.3 release coming out this week, and everything else that you would want to learn about the partnership between STEALTHbits and NetApp. Again, I am Jonathan Sander, your host. Thank you for joining us today, and hope to see you next time.